Everyone, and welcome to the webinar Display and Paid Search, Essential Pairing for Maximum Lift, presented today by Trada with special guest Brooks Waugh from Yahoo, who I will introduce in just a moment. Just so everyone knows, this call is being recorded today, and we will give you the opportunity later on, probably early tomorrow. We'll send you an email where you can watch the recording and take a look at the slides. If you have any questions today, please go ahead and type them directly into your chat box, and we will get to as many as we can at the end. We love answering your questions. It's often the most fun part of the call. So I will jump right into it. Let's introduce our speakers. Today we have Brooks Waugh, who is the Senior Director of Mid-Market Display Sales from Yahoo. Brooks, thanks so much for calling in today.
Thank you so much for having me. Looking forward to it.
Brooks is calling in from Boston, and he has been doing mid-market display sales for quite a while at Yahoo. Is that correct, Brooks?
11 years.
Wow, so he really knows the business.
Yep, so the way I look at it.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, sorry. 11 years is probably worth 15 or 16 years of experience working for this particular company, so there's benefit to that. But I know that I've shaved probably 10 years off of my life on the back end, so it all washes out.
That's a complex algorithm there. We also have in the room with us today Matt Hessler. He's our Director of Account Management at Trada. It says 10 years of PPC and SEO, but I think we've been saying that for a few years now.
Oh, I know. I'm getting older and older. I'm just going to leave that 10 years on there to not belie my age.
Lying about his age. And I will be your moderator today. I'm Anna Sawyer, and I work at Trada. So everyone, we would love to hear you tweeting today. If you use the hashtag PPC and display, you are eligible to win a cool $25 from Amazon.com. We will announce the winner probably tomorrow on Twitter. But please tweet out some of the things that Brooks or Matt talk about today, and you may be lucky enough to win. So let's jump right into it. Today we are talking about search and display. Using these two together has been proven time and time again to really increase conversions across the board. And I know that a lot of mid-market customers may have felt like display has perhaps not had the same conversion rate as search in the past. And really today we're going to talk about how it's not really an apples-to-apples comparison, and how it really, when used together in a true integrated digital marketing campaign, you can get a maximum amount of lift.
Yep. I mean, I really like this. It seems interesting, and we're certainly fans of what Brooks does and Yahoo Display Network here at Trada. But you have to understand how to evaluate those results, and if, as Anna was saying, you try to make it two apples to apples, you may not understand the true benefit you're getting by pairing the two. So let's get into it.
Yeah, so Brooks put together a lot of this content today. So in a lot of ways, I'm going to have him drive kind of the content, and then Matt and myself will probably chime in. So Brooks, please take it away.
So thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Just to give you a little bit of additional context, when we talk about mid-market at Yahoo, what we're talking about is a variety of verticals and client sizes. Think of it as being Fortune 501 and up, but also think of it as smaller and medium-sized businesses that invest in display. We've been at this for a while, and there's a heavy percentage of our account base, which I'm assuming is how we're looking at this audience on the phone, is very direct response focused. My sense is that the folks that are joining us today are either active in display, that have also been burned by display at one point, at some point in their history, or are new to it. So I'm taking an approach that is fairly 101 as of 2012. So I'm going to jump into it here if that's okay, Anna.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Brooks.
So we look at just we have some data from ComScore that just kind of looks at the overall internet population in terms of the reach that you can get via search advertising and the overall reach that you can get via display advertising. And this is looking at retail channels overall. So there's a lot of opportunity that exists out there. And if you dive a little bit deeper into the next slide, what we've also found very interesting and kind of concerning in our business is that click rates have decreased over time. And what you see is 2/3 of folks polled in this survey have actually taken some kind of action as a result of a display ad. Now, some of that is actually clicks. So you have 2/3 of the internet population taking some kind of action. At the top on the right, you see 9% actually investigated the product or brand or company via a social media outlet or a message board. 21% actually typed the company's name into the actual web browser. 27% searched for a product or brand using a search engine, and only 31% actually clicked on the ad itself. Now, it's discouraging for somebody in my business that click rates are going down, but it's encouraging for me to see that people are taking action in other ways, which actually represents the lion's share of the action that is actually taken. So the ad does more than just serve as a click vehicle. On to the next slide. Nearly half of the consumers that have actually taken action, 14% performed a related search, 24% performed a related search and visited search results, and 11% actually performed a related search and did not click on anything. So we're dealing with a narrowing population of individuals that are taking action overall, but at the end of the day, according to Forrester, display can drive more folks to the desired outcome that you have. Interestingly
and
as well.
If I may interject here, folks, later in the presentation we will be talking about how you can tell what sort of action users took. We will be talking about attribution.
Sure. And I think it's really interesting, for those of you who always think about this. I think a lot of the mid-market thinks that they have to make a choice between the two, but even in these first few slides you can see, okay, this is pushing people to go to search, and they're going to type a query either around the brand or around the product, and so how do you align these two becomes pretty evident as the right strategy.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you.
If you look at this slide here, we're going to dive into this a little bit deeper during the attribution segment, which is part 2 of this call. But what you see is exposure to a display ad increases the number of trademark searches overall. So we'll show you a graph in a little bit, but it's nice to see that there's a 52% lift in actual trademark searches against a brand within week 1 of actually being exposed to a display ad, and it tapers off over time, but even in week 4 you're seeing a 38% lift. And it's true across the verticals. Average lift across all categories is still very strong in terms of search that's been influenced by display ad. The best responders are in the health and travel and tourism categories. It doesn't surprise me that CPG lags so far behind, even though there is a lift, because most of the folks don't think about CPG purchases online. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the offline component in a little bit. But it's nice to see this be across various categories. Now, display has evolved tremendously in the 11-plus years that I've been involved with this company. And if we look at what this slide is telling us, there's various methods that you can use to drive the best results as it relates to searches, branded search lifts. Retargeting, my sense is that the audience here is investing in retargeting through one of the many players that are out there overall, but you're seeing 1,000% lift in searches for retargeting types of display ads. And from kind of a definition of terms perspective, retargeting is simply placing pixels in various spots around your site and then serving ads elsewhere during a user's internet experience based upon the actual pages that they saw on your site. So it's incredibly effective from a click-through rate perspective, but it also sees tremendous search lift as well. And we'll go into a little bit more about the audience, premium, contextual, etc. Any need to stop here, Anna?
No, please keep going. This is great.
Okay. Let's go on to the next slide here. So in terms of display activity in terms of search activity influenced by display ad, it's not only helping your paid search, but it's also helping your organic search too. And you can actually see where organic search leads in different categories over paid search. So it's nice to see that organic performs so well. So you're not paying for those clicks when people are searching for your brands. And again, it's lifts across various categories that we've got. And when ultimately comes down to the moment of truth, we're seeing an 83% lift in conversion rate. This is according to a media context study about folks that were exposed to an ad versus those that weren't. So 0.57% conversion rate versus 0.31. So not only does display have the ability to garner awareness, to drive more search activity, but it also creates a lift when it comes time to conversion.
Brooks, I'm going to stop you here just with a question or comment. You mentioned that this is graphical advertising that pushes this lift. When you talk about display, do you include kind of text-based display as well as visual display, or do you segment those out, especially when you're talking about some of these metrics we're seeing here?
Yeah, so great question. No, we don't. The overall base of text link types of advertising has diminished over time. You would see, high volume placements like within Yahoo Mail. There's kind of what we call our northwest text link in the top left-hand corner. So those are taken into consideration, but we're reducing the amount of those that we've had on the network over the years. So yes, that's part of the deal.
Is that partly because you just find the visual stuff is more impactful?
Definitely. And what we see, so the visual stuff is definitely more impactful in terms of making an impression and creating an influence. What we see with the text link-based advertisements, they're cheap, high-volume types of units that have enough people see them for heavy direct response types of advertisers. They see those as great vehicles still.
Cool. All right.
I mentioned that we're going to be talking a little bit about the offline exposure here. So combining search and display, if you see 16% for display only and 82% for search only, 16 and 82 doesn't just add up to 98%, but it adds up to 119% in terms of the lift in retailer sales when you're combining the both. So finding the right mix is challenging, but certainly can improve the overall offline conversions as well for those of you that actually have offline presences. So when we look, as a review, exposure to display ads increase trademark searches, so they could be product-based or they could be company-based. They increase search clicks and ultimately online purchases from search. And if you take advantage of the interest in generated with a display advertising with a search campaign that reinforces that message overall, am I on the right slide here? So sorry, let me go back one here. I flip forward here, Anna. Oh, here we are. Sorry.
You're in the right place. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're in the right place.
I was looking at the wrong one. So when you use display advertising, leverage display advertising, building awareness, reinforcing brand image across a very, very large audience, which we looked at on the first slide. And I would suspect that most folks know when to use search advertising, which is what that bottom box looks at. So reaching your low-hanging fruit active shoppers that are looking for what you have to offer. And then if you look at this slide that I was speaking to early, exposure to a display ad increases those trademark searches, search clicks, and online purchases from search. And if you can take advantage of the interest generated from display advertising with a search campaign that reinforces your message, there could be a good opportunity for you here in terms of increased conversions and that top of the funnel type of flow.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I really think about that as a funnel myself, that the display is kind of the widest part of the funnel, and hopefully you're netting out with good actionable search at the narrow part of the funnel as people have learned about the brand, and the brand is kind of validated through these ad touches and impressions of seeing the ad multiple times, seeing the visual imagery that goes with the ad. It kind of tends to stick with people a little better than just a text ad, and then when it comes time to search, that's a little more top of mind.
So Brooks,
Absolutely.
You spend a lot of time talking to mid-market customers, and one thing I know about a mid-market marketing team is that a lot of times they have a short amount of time to prove that an activity is valid. And with display, a lot of times it's about awareness, a lot of times it's about branding, and while we are able to measure this lift, is this something that's going to take a really long time to prove? Or, for those of us who are running search campaigns and want to try again, running display campaigns with them to see this lift, how quickly are we going to be able to see that ROI?
It's going to vary so much across categories, Anna, overall. You're going to find that there's going to have to be some patience on behalf of the clients that are willing to increase that investment in filling the top of the funnel to drive people down the way. And it's going to vary so much across different categories overall. We're going to get more into that a little bit in the attribution piece, which is a few slides away, so maybe we can revisit it when we get there.
Yeah, that'd be great. All right.
Taking a look, and this is actually an internal Yahoo tool, and forgive me for being fairly busy here, but I'll be able to kind of sort you through what I want you to look at. Clearly Yahoo has a search property, and when we run high-impact types of campaigns, and when I talk about high impact, I'm talking about lots of impressions in a given day. So maybe it's a seasonal launch or it's a product launch. When digital advertisers heavy up on a given day, we see spikes in search activity overall. So if you see the top right circle, so kind of the fourth one from the left, that was a huge, front page or roadblock type of effort taken over. So you see search activity, go through the roof based upon that particular heaviness. If you look at the lower one, kind of the lower left of that, the third one over, you're seeing that 5.3 million impressions were delivered against the campaign within a given period of time. So we talked to our marketers about this, and again, it reinforces not just from third-party data about the impact that display has on search, but we get a real-time look at searches for specific brands, specific models of cars, and specific products. So it reinforces that message that we've been talking about so far.
Very
it's
cool.
nicer to see it in a graphical trend here. And then, again, I probably didn't say this up front, but I want to be careful about being too Yahoo-centric on this call. There's some things that I do want to share that I think that are nice to hear about, but also we're trying to mix in third-party data versus what we've got internally. A few years ago, we launched some high-impact ad units on our login page, and these drive less impressions than maybe a roadblock on a NetBlock or a homepage takeover, which we see those search spikes. And again, this slide's a little bit busy, but what we found is that there's an awareness lift. There was a control study against, for Chevrolet, it was a Malibu, I think it was, and we saw a lift in people who had seen this ad, which is a large ad, and I'll show you an example in a little bit, for awareness. But there was also a search lift. So that second chart on the bottom shows a lift in actual model searches for, I think it was the Chevy Traverse or Chevy Malibu. And the larger creative canvas is something that garners even more attention. So when we go back to what you guys were talking about earlier, text links versus high-impact units, these are things that are garnering mind share to where certain cases there are not even click-through buttons on these sites, but people are taking the time to actually go in and search for that particular model later on. So it was a really interesting story that we like seeing, and it reinforces that filling the top of the funnel message.
Great, thanks, Brooks. So I think now we're going to move into the attribution section of the webinar. When you're using two different marketing channels, one of the things that is the most confusing and one of the toughest things to deal with is, of all of this spend, what is actually generating the results? So I believe that Brooks is going to talk a little bit about how we can understand attribution and what the best practices are for understanding attribution.
Absolutely. So this is probably one of the more nagging and elusive and complex types of challenges or problems, not only from kind of the publisher side or people that are involved in the space, but also from a marketing perspective as well. And I know that folks on the phone with a lot of search history have done all kinds of testing, and technologies have expanded to where you could do more to determine what was the most valuable way to go about your search, search efforts. Attribution is going to be something that's going to stay with us for a long time. There are tremendous partners that are out there that I'll talk to you about kind of as references later on. From a point of view perspective, this is kind of a mix of a Yahoo and industry point of view, but advertisers and agencies, we feel and others feel, are undervaluing the effectiveness of their online advertising, particularly in display. So driving that desired action and staying so focused on that last click conversion measurement. Now, we've talked here so far about the ability for display to influence the top of the funnel. But what we haven't addressed yet necessarily is what value does that actually bring to the table? So a lot of folks agree that last click model is flawed, but the challenges that marketers see is first, selecting display outlet. There are creative constraints that come into jumping into display and having the ability to put multiple resources of creative out there. There's got to be that willingness that's hard to sell through marketing organizations to move away or move some piece of it away from that last click methodology. And in some cases, you've actually got to select a technology partner to help you with that. Identifying a frequency sweet spot is also key. So great, you filled my top of the funnel with lots and lots of users. How many times did they actually have to see an ad before they got to where I needed them to be, and how valuable was that overall? So actually, sorry about the build there in the front. There's a full funnel. But if you look on the left-hand side, I'm going to talk to you about 6 different types of advertisers. So top left advertiser is one that's found the right mix as far as branded display, top of the funnel efforts, middle of the funnel performance efforts, and I'll talk specifically about what components make those up, and then bottom of the funnel, mouth of the river types of search efforts. The one behind that I think has real good branded display and then good at sales, good at search on the bottom. Advertiser on the right is likely someone who's more of a lead gen, needs a larger audience, needs clicks on ads, needs conversions, and then does a little bit of search as well. Folks on the lower left-hand side, kind of advertiser 4, are those who are solely investing in search, and that might be that display doesn't work, and it doesn't work for everybody. That might be that their category is so defined that there's just not a large enough audience and no technology that would help you find that audience versus via display vehicle. You have advertiser 5 kind of in the middle there, just has the performance display bucket filled. Small search, not worth investing, but don't have the ability to leverage their brand overall. Heavy direct response types of advertisers. And then the ones in the lower right, which sometimes are fun for us to work with, because they invest in some of the premium sponsorship-driven types of things. They're about getting the message out there overall.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting just because we see a lot of these customer types. Maybe you're in an industry where you are really cutting edge, and what we find, as primarily a search company, is sometimes there's just not the audience out there. You guys are breaking such new ground that as a company, people aren't searching for your product, and pushing to that middle kind of performance display can truly be a sweet spot for you.
Absolutely. And we'll look at more of that. Taking the funnel and using a different way to describe it here, we've got wine glasses full. So if you look at 5 wine glasses at the top, there's that awareness and favorability part of the funnel overall, and there's loss. If you're not being in front of if you're not being in front of consumers with that brand message and what your value proposition is, there are folks that you're going to lose, and you're going to lose them anyway. And as we move down the funnel, the top piece is what we would consider branded display, and that's what we were looking at on the previous slide. These are guaranteed placements. They tend to be in contextual areas. They can tend to be sponsorships of fantasy or finance or health-related categories. There are high-impact units, so takeovers on certain pages. There are other high-volume areas like Hotmail or Gmail or Yahoo Mail where you can do a heavy-up presence in a short period of time to get the word out. And those tend to come with a premium, CPM types of modeling, and that's probably where we see most of the resistance from folks who have a tight CPA type of metric overall. In the middle of that kind of favorability consideration, trying to catch them while they're considering something, we have performance display, and this is not just we at Yahoo, but there are plenty of outlets that you have out there. These are often buys on less expensive inventory, less premium inventory, later in the day types of inventory with a CPA or CPC metric involved. You can do net blocks in certain cases. You can do remarketing, retargeting in these areas. And ultimately, you're going to capture that mouth of the river and hopefully have driven more via these premium performance-related products that are cheaper, and then catch them ultimately in action via your search efforts overall. So there's a lot on this slide, Anna, and I don't know if you want to stop and kind of talk a little bit more about it, or Matt?
I mean, do you feel like there's a sweet spot here if you're aligning, both some search budget and display budget that, would you even go so far as to say that the very top awareness level is almost too wide to create a successful pairing? My experience has been that when you're in the middle set here, the favorability and consideration, those are people that are already thinking slightly transactionally. Now they've been exposed to the brand. Then they go do a search, and you find a little bit, the lift is a little better right there, has been my experience. When you go too far up into the awareness, it just gets a little harder to connect those dots. You're catching people where they weren't really in a consideration mode. They're just being exposed to the brand or products maybe for the first time.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. It's going to vary across different categories, and it's going to vary across, the digital marketer's experience with all 3 different types. As we get towards the end here, I have some thoughts about recommendations depending upon where folks are in their display experience. By no means, and if I worked for any company, would I say to, and probably anybody on this phone, if you haven't started yet, let's start way at the top and get the word out and then spend $300K in a weekend to do so. I think it's going to start more along the lines of retargeting, very laser-focused types of audiences that you've got, and kind of in that middle bucket where it's less expensive inventory. Deploy the tools that back into CPA or CPC types of metrics and see what the lift is on search from there.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
So Go ahead, Brooks.
Yep. Jumped ahead here. We partnered, so more on kind of attribution in general in a couple of slides here, but I mentioned up front that attribution is, again, one of those tough things for everybody to figure out, but it's getting better. We had a case study with 3 partners. The first one was with Clear Sailing, and I'm going to introduce a concept of the introducer. So talking about the display ads at some point in the funnel that introduce the consumer to your product or to your brand. And what this graph tells us that online display advertising actually starts the majority of the customer's interaction, but isn't currently given credit for that introduction overall. So said another way, customers would not have sought the product if they had not seen a display ad. And in this case, you see a chart where you see an 8% lift against premium publishers. You see a little bit less for the overall industry average, some less for ad networks, and even lower for DSPs. But it's nice to see that display is responsible for introducing high single-digit types of interactions for marketers who invest heavily in search overall. We also see a lift in revenue per order, and I think this is across the retail category here, for folks for actual consumers that were introduced to somebody's brand and ultimately converted if they were introduced to it via a display conversation or a display exposure. The next case study was with a company called C3 Metrics here, and again, I want to be very careful about being too Yahoo-centric here. But what I do want to point out is that those consumers that were looking at kind of that introduction or that origination started with somebody seeing a display ad, our scale and the quality of our inventory, due to some of the targeting that we have and due to the actual robust brand safe type of content, has made our inventory very, very valuable. So we've seen a lift, and this is a third-party study that shows a lot of those introductions happen on our network. Now, we don't get credit for all of them. We do have a very large direct response advertiser that's a traditional advertiser that has adopted display very, very well. And kind of a side note, they see that 70% of their ultimate conversions originated via somebody seeing one of their ads on a Yahoo site. And again, that's not because we're the best at everything and because we're so great. It's just the scale that we've got. And interestingly, when we look at comparing other third-party ad networks that aggregate supply and resell it to other advertisers that are out there, they buy a lot of it from us, and they buy a lot of it from us because it performs fairly well. So these 2 slides, as part of this case study, are designed to introduce the idea of introductions, of originations. And then the next slide, simply put, again, not to be too Yahoo-centric here, but up and to the right is good. And this is from Odometry. This speaks specifically about competitors and their ability to drive branded search clicks at scale.
Wow, so that puts you guys, what's the axis that we're looking at? Is that just viewer base or reach, I guess, in here?
Yeah, so it's site-assisted number of branded search click users. So it's in the thousands. The far right is 140,000. And the left axis, or the y-axis, is lift in brand search click user rate.
Okay, interesting.
So the other thing that I would say here is, boy, wouldn't I wish the stock was up and to the right over the time that I've been here.
That's right.
Gotta love being on webinars that everybody's on mute because you just assume that everybody's laughing the whole time at your jokes.
That's right.
Oh, they definitely are.
Raucous laughter throughout the crowd.
So I think and this was a duplicate slide here, this is a slide that I do want to spend some time on, and probably Anna and Matt will ask you to ask some questions here. So top left, you have a user that's on Facebook that visits, that spends some time on Facebook and is exposed to a display ad from LifeLock, the identity theft company. So that introduction, that's the originator impression. Day 2, a visitor searches for identity theft, not the brand, not LifeLock, not the company, but for the actual product or problem.
Sure.
So day 2. So the search is done there. They get the assist for that search overall. On day 4, They actually click on an ad because maybe it was retargeted to them when they were spending time in their Gmail account or on their fantasy sports site. On day 4, they click on the actual ad to visit the company's site to learn more about what the product has to offer because it's on their brain. And day 8, they come back to the well and do a search.
Is the assumption here that the user saw an ad for LifeLock, didn't really remember what it was called, so then typed in, what did
identity theft.
Identity theft, but then that LifeLock actually won the search auction and their ad showed up?
Yes, correct.
Is that the assumption? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Or as we looked at earlier, it may have been something that influenced the, them to click on an organic result.
Yep.
So the origination is the key to this overall here, and then by day 8, you have that same user who has conducted a search and then ultimately converted because they feel like this is a product that's going to help them overall. Now, everybody, whether it's Facebook or Google or ad.com or anybody that's actually running LifeLock ads, everybody wants credit for that original impression. And if the marketers paid everybody out for that, for that particular origination credit, this would be not an ROI positive type of situation. The other trick is to understanding what the length of the window should be for measuring these originations, these assists, and these conversions. Is it flowers or is it GMC SUVs? Determining what the actual window should be is really what takes a lot of testing, and we have a lot of information across categories and kind of what that should be. The last thing, too, is that you've got how many times had this individual on Facebook seen this ad? What was the frequency? Was she inundated? Had she seen it 50 times? Had she seen it every time she logged in a given week to where it finally broke her to actually do this? Or had they selected a frequency via a cap to make it so that they know what the sweet spot is overall? So the problem that is, again, nagging everybody in this industry is that everybody involved in this wants their piece of the pie. Determining the length of time that you should be measuring these types of things and understanding what the value is of each interaction that consumer has is hard to do.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's really hard. I think the frequency stuff is interesting. It's become, more of a forefront question in digital, especially because of Facebook presence. They're such a huge, page view inventory, but they're really bad about frequency, in my opinion. Like, you just get inundated with the same ads where, maybe sometimes it breaks a customer in a good way. Like, okay, I've seen this ad for the 4th time and I'm curious. I think a lot of times it can also lead to, ad fatigue and ad blindness, where I just totally have started to tune those out. And, I think where Yahoo and some of the other more long-standing display networks, the ads show up in different places, in different formats, and that kind of freshness makes them a little more compelling as far as I'm concerned.
And one of the benefits of working with a platform or an agency who understands this sort of thing is that they have the data and the experience to know how frequently you should show ads. Yeah. And they have the ability to measure it.
Yep.
Absolutely. And publishing partners or, publishers like Yahoo also have a good lens on when we can set frequency caps, and there's a lot of testing that goes on. You kind of go out full blast initially and then back it off to a sweet spot again. So
yep.
Makes a ton of sense.
If looking at attribution here, again, trying to keep this fairly 101. We could spend a couple of hours on this, and I've got some resources for the audience at the end of the presentation here. So, according to Forrester, adopting some kind of measurement methodology can be daunting, and in the near term, for both short-term and long-term success, make sure you're targeting display ads to relevant searchers. Create consistency across the display and the search messages, so there's a commonality for that user's experience, whether it's on the origination or whether it's on the conversion. And then make sure that communication between display and search teams are as robust as ever. We find that it's still very, very siloed across all of the partners that we've got. It's gotten better. In the long term, if you can unify the display and search data into a single dashboard, there's a better opportunity for success there. And we've listed 5 different partners that we've evaluated overall that do a good job at full funnel attribution. And I would encourage you, if this is something that is of interest to you, to reach out to them. we've identified these folks as probably the primo ones.
Thanks.
Interesting. I don't recognize any of them.
Yeah, I mean it's a niche science for sure, but I think for people that are really trying to figure out the value for the money that they're spending on some of these cross-channel advertising, you need a partner like this.
So everyone, we have a few more minutes of content. We're going to talk a little bit about ad creative when it comes to display ads, what to avoid, what to look for, how to design your ads. And then in just a few minutes, we will be taking all of your questions. So we've gotten some great questions so far. Please continue to type them into the chat box. Also, please continue to tweet using the hashtag PPC and display. You still have the opportunity to win that $25 Amazon.com gift card. Brooks, so please take us away on creative.
Great, and this is probably going to be the most 101 component of this here, but I thought I'd share some thoughts from the lens of somebody, a marketer that hasn't invested heavily in display so far. So here are things that you're going to run to overall. You're going to look at leveraging a third-party ad server or relying on a site like MSN or AOL or Yahoo to serve your ads for you, and there's benefits to each. You're going to be dealing with lots of different ad sizes. So if you're going to jump into display, it's not about just one particular ad unit and one size. And there are IAB standards that exist out there, but across different sites, you're going to be looking at various file size limitations as well. So not all partners are necessarily equal, or not all outlets are necessarily equal. Very important to test multiple versions for unique offers. Make sure you have plenty of creative in the rotation that speaks to the same kind of offer, but in a different way. And then this is a must, and we still see advertisers that will submit 10 pieces of creative and have them all be one URL specific, so we can't tell the difference between how well each unit of creative is doing. And so that's a must. Rich media, most of you as internet users, whether you invest in display or not, are very well aware of expandable ads and incorporating video, something I would highly encourage, because what it can do is give you a bigger creative canvas within that actual user experience. But we can also tell you a lot about what people are interacting with as they expand that creative overall. And then lastly, this is something that's emerged over the last few years, is dynamic creative generation. So serving a customized one-on-one type of ad to a user based upon what you know about them, based upon searches they've made recently, and then even as specific as to a site, a page on your site that they viewed in recent times, and it can show up on a network somewhere else within minutes. I'd all encourage you, if you haven't been to Pottery Barn, go on Pottery Barn and then spend some time on Yahoo. You'll probably see one within a few minutes.
Interesting. I'll check it out.
Yeah, they're good. Or a lot of the travel sites as well. For those of you that kind of don't know what smart ads or dynamically created ads are, do a flight search on Travelocity from Denver to Boston, and you'll start seeing Travelocity ads subsequently that have DEN to BOS and fares associated with it. So it's a great way to engage the consumer.
I've seen also great retargeting from ModCloth. ModCloth is a company that makes dresses and shoes for women, and I am pretty sure that they have personalized retargeting. They seem to retarget based on the sorts of things that I've looked at and things that I've bought.
The good
specific
news is
to the product.
The good news is that I'm not seeing those.
That is the good news.
Yeah, it is.
Unless you're using my laptop.
Yeah, exactly. So a handful of best practices. We're going to go through this fairly quickly here. We're with the opinion that it's important to show the brand prominently on all of the frames. Don't hide it. Reinforces the messaging throughout so people know, and they might stay tuned more if they know what the brand is. Each frame should stand on its own, so this is a case where you see an expandable type of ad that actually brings more of the message to life, lets the user interact. Reveal ads, ones that build over time, tend to lose user attention. You've got about 3 seconds to communicate your message for most users, and they can tune out very, very quickly.
And there's no brand recognition on that first slide there. Right. So nobody knows what you're talking about at this point.
Absolutely. Same thing goes for the next kind of a build down type of slide here, type of ad here, where you don't see the branding until the third one. And so not only is it a no-no from a reveal perspective because they tend to underperform, but also you're not giving folks a sense of what your brand is right off the bat. Keep it simple. 1 or 2 key ideas. Don't make the message too complex. I think with a lot of pharmaceutical DTC advertising, you'll see a whole bunch of real estate taken up with terms and conditions and disclaimers and things like that. It's hard for them to do. Keep it simple. Expandable ads, like I talked about, have a higher impact, and even ones that try different colors, invest in different formats, different calls to actions, different colors of buttons. Part of what dynamic creative can do, or smart ads can do, is it's not just about showing the right content within the ad, but colors, pictures, based upon what we see that consumer being. And again, don't make people work for the message. Get to the point fairly quickly. And if they have the ability as a rich media component, let them get to where they need to be quicker. Same thing here. And the last piece, one of the last pieces here is we talked about frequency caps a little bit earlier. Don't annoy them. Everybody's seen an ad like this. You remember the dancing lower my bills people that Yahoo used to drive a lot of revenue from? That was about the only ad that you'd see on a given day. There is a point where you can oversaturate this, and it just doesn't work from a volume perspective either, and it's bad for your brand.
Yep.
Product shots, getting some humans in there. Those are all things that we encourage here. Anything on these kind of little best practices? I just threw this in here for idea generation's sake.
No, I mean, I think this is great. I think, a lot of the audience that's coming from search, may be new to display, or, they've got a rough idea and you've got to put together, a few skyscrapers or this or that. I think those best practices are a really good guideline. Some of it seems obvious, and then people seem to screw it up regardless. I mean, something as easy as keep it simple. If you don't really, measure yourself on that, and you want to get some more messaging in there, and you want to make sure your value proposition is loud and clear, and all of a sudden it's busy and it's not simple, and that's not always. I think you see a lot of times search marketers, especially trying to do display, try to make it too transactional. And what we've covered a lot in this material is that this is the wider part of the funnel. It's an introduction to the brand. Maybe you give the audience something that's a little bit emotive, that sticks with them, that's visually impactful, and then leave the transactional thing to later in the funnel.
And another takeaway from this is always just to make sure that you're testing. Display is continually becoming more performance-based. You have the opportunity to have it be click-based or CPA-based, and to be able to quickly compare two ads and determine which one is performing better. These are great guidelines, but the ad that performs better is the better ad.
Test, test, test.
Testing.
Test, test, and measure all the way up and down.
Absolutely.
Yep.
The next slide is going to just, I flashed this earlier in that Chevrolet example, and this is something that we're seeing a lot of success with. And I think it's important to note that the canvas is getting a lot bigger. Standard ads are very robust and very abundant, and there's a lot that you can do within a 300 by 250 ad on any page. We've found a lot of success in taking the whole page over. This is one of the top 3 properties that we have on Yahoo, and I think for this audience here, it's important to note that it's a great branding vehicle as well, but I've been blown away by the success we've seen with direct response advertisers getting attention. These things click through very, very well. And they're not just about buying, a 24-hour exclusive period for a hefty premium. You can buy auto intenders on a monthly basis. You can buy any audience, and as long as there's availability, these things will run. And boy, wouldn't we love to see some of the brands on this call take over Yahoo login page at some point. So if we're new to display, explore mid to lower funnel opportunities, ones that are behaviorally targeted, low cost, remnant inventory that's done on a CPM or CPC, CPA type of basis. I'd encourage you to explore site and retargeting, folks that have visited your site, find them elsewhere, get them to come back, give them another offer. Search retargeting, take your keyword list and give it to a publisher and have them serve impressions based upon folks that have searched for those particular keywords in recent days. Places to start, large publishers like AOL, MSN, Google, and Yahoo, ad networks like ad.com, AdReady, Turn, Rocket Fuel. For those smaller partners that maybe we have on the phone here, AdReady is an interesting product because they give you the ability not only to buy and access inventory, but they have a creative tool as well, where you can actually build out your own creative as part of the overall buy. And then from a retargeting perspective, Google Criteo is one likely that our partners on the phone here today have invested with. They do a great job. There's some former Yahoos that are over there. The Tomy, Fetchback, and we have some as well. So those are some new to display thoughts. And then wrapping up, this landscape is complex, but the opportunity, and the opportunity is abundant. We've seen that display has an impact on search. Getting marketers to consider, lobby for internally, an ability to get beyond that last click conversion measurement is hard to do, but there are partners that help you measure up and down the funnel to see what kind of credit should be given for the origination or for the assist. And at the end of the day, creative can be delivered to the right person at the right time based upon something they did 10 minutes ago.
And another, kind of final thought here is that display advertising is becoming much more usable and available to a smaller, more mid-market customer. It's not just for big brands, and I know that we looked at a lot of big brand examples today. A lot of it is because they're the ones who are often the most savvy about it, but I don't believe that you necessarily need to have these massive multi-million-dollar budgets in order to succeed in display, especially not if you're using performance display or search retargeting.
Absolutely. For the time that I've been here at Yahoo, we have seen spends start from small and grow big. We've seen spends start from small and grow medium. This is not a situation where we want to see someone come on with an X $1,000 type of test, and the next time they re-up, it's got to be $100,000 in the next month. There are plenty of opportunities for new-to-display types of advertisers that we can make available.
Very cool.
Great. So everyone, I'm going to take just a couple minutes to talk about our next webinar and a little bit about Trada, and then we will get to your questions. So please continue to type them in. We will get to as many as we can in the hour. We may go a couple minutes over because we want to get to as many questions as possible. So next month on November 29th, we actually have a special guest, Criteo, who Brooks mentioned. They are a search retargeting company. They actually do a lot of different things. We're going to talk about how performance marketing is now creating generally a very usable amount of big data, which is within your reach, even as a smaller or mid-market customer. And it's really changing the way that your marketing team predicts and uses and understands user behavior. We'll talk a lot about reimagining the funnel and allowing this data to determine what your funnel means, and just being a lot more data-centric about the way that you do your integrated marketing. So that's going to be a great webinar. If you'd like to be automatically registered for that webinar, you can sign up for our Trada webinar series, which means that we will just register you for our monthly webinars and send you a reminder, and you won't need to sign up for them on your own. So if you'd like to be added to that list, please just go ahead and type into the chat box, add me to the webinar list, and we'll make sure that you're connected with that. So I'm going to take just a couple minutes to talk about how Trada can help you with paid search. We've talked a lot today about how display can help you squeeze every last dollar out of your search, and I have the impression that most of the people on the call today are either doing search or have been doing search. So Trada is a relatively, well, actually it's a completely unique proposition. It works differently from a lot of the other platforms that you've worked with. We are a community-based solution, which means that we have a community of many, many highly specialized paid search experts who live around the world. And when you join Trada, we assign these experts to work on your campaigns based on their expertise and their historical performance. So they actually do all of the work of search advertising for you. They research keywords, they optimize, they design ad groups, and you get the benefits of saving a lot of time. You get a much better ROI because you have multiple experts working for you at the same time. And collectively, they are able to get a much wider reach using lots of different ad copy and keywords. And most importantly, it's performance-based. So these guys are paid when they beat your goals. If you are interested in learning a little bit more about Trada, please go ahead and just type "I'd like a demo" into the chat box. It's quick and easy. It's a live demo. We'll give you a personalized campaign assessment and tell you about how Trada can help you. You have the opportunity to ask all kinds of questions and get solutions. So we will move right into questions here in just a minute. And before we do, I want to mention that Brooks mentioned a little something about a Forrester report that we will be sharing in the email tomorrow. We will go ahead and send it out in the email. Brooks, can you talk a little bit about this report and how it will help with attribution while I'm getting the questions ready?
Yeah, if you want to learn more about the kind of overall state of the union in the attribution world, or truthfully fall asleep, dive into this report. I think it's a 17-page report, and we're going to include it in the email that follows this. Interesting stuff, different industry point of view, a little bit more high level and granular for those of you that are interested in learning more about this. In advance of that, we're also going to send out a link to, it was a Search, was it SIS in April? So is it Search Innovation Summit? Insider. It's Search Insider Summit, I'm sorry. One of the fellows that I've got here in the office, he was on a panel. So we're going to include that link to a Ustream replay. It's about 47 minutes or so. Different variety of marketers and technology partners and agencies. Good productive discussion, so you can see, or it'll reinforce the idea that this is a complex problem overall, but we'll send those out to you after.
Great, thanks so much, Brooks. So I'm actually going to send the first question over to you, Brooks. And this is from Michael. He wants to know, how do you prove people exposed to your display ads wouldn't have made it to your site without the exposure?
That's a really good question overall. I think that it comes in, I actually had, I have one of my partners here who helped me with this deck overall and a lot of this research. He does a lot with our data analytics. Anyone want to take a crack at that overall?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sure. What we've seen, I mean, it's all within the attribution. It's how do you prove that somebody who was not exposed to an ad would not have made it, or would have made it in the first place? Was that the question?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's all in sort of the way that advertising works. I mean, if you don't have an ad out there, you can't get someone from the top of the funnel down through to the bottom. But it's also, in this day and age, instead of the last click methodology, the way that we can prove that someone who actually saw an ad within a given period of time and did certain actions, think of that LifeLock example, that's where we can prove the value of each of the different actions that somebody undertook. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more about, especially in mass, and we've seen some great aggregate data in this presentation. It's about in mass, the positives of how it works. The actual question of would they have found it otherwise is always hard to tell. You don't know whether that user had any exposure to the brand prior to seeing that ad for the first time. But I think that the data is really compelling that when they see it, they do take the right action. So you can't say that they may have stumbled upon you a different way, an organic search result, referral, something else, but you guys have shown us enough data here, yeah, that I think it's pretty compelling that you really want to be at that wider part of the funnel for sure.
So
absolutely.
This segues nicely into another question, which I'd actually like to send to Matt first. Cliff wants to know, what is the best attribution model if it's not last click? So this will help us perhaps to understand where some of these assists came in.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is really tricky, and typically the providers that I've seen that do this really well, and you guys provided a list, you have to go pretty far in the weeds. You can do some things. You can have all of your partners use and append on all their URLs, so you can tell, the partner source. If you look at a combination of that and IP address and you kind of regress those, what you really want is to paint a picture of, for a customer that transacted, what were all of the places that they touched your brand? Can you see, that they saw a display ad? Now, if they saw it but didn't click on it, that can be really difficult. Then they went and did some search, and maybe they finally ended up leaving after doing the search, but they were retargeted to. Maybe they were hit by all three, and I mean, I think this is old school, marketing 101 when they used to tell you that you have to touch a user multiple times before they kind of have that brand cemented in their mind as one of the people they would consider when it comes time for purchase. So you can do this through Omniture. I know if you've got like big in-house tools like Omniture, they typically require a dedicated staff person, some really serious data regression, but there are ways to do it. You know, it's IP address and kind of source coding, but it's possible. I find it really hard through analytics, which I know is very popular because it's free and fairly easy. But be interested to hear what you guys on the Yahoo side say about best ways to track if you're not going to do last click attribution.
Yeah, well, we've vetted a bunch of different partners. Brooks showed a slide that had them on there, Odometry and C3 and Visual IQ. What we find is there are two kinds of attribution. One is rules-based, where you're sort of saying, all right, first view, third view, fifth view. I mean, you can make all kinds of different sort of arbitrary rules about who sees what and in what window. Odometry, C3, Visual IQ, they have more of a scientific approach where they look at all of the data within a given campaign on a real-time basis and assign. They have algorithms and they use various probabilistic modeling and that sort of thing to assign values to the different events within a given user's media stack and then aggregate that through to sort of what should be assigned, what value across the funnel.
Great, thanks guys. So I have another question. This one's from Matt. What is the most, I'm actually going to send this over to Brooks and team at Yahoo. What is the most cost-effective visual ad unit? Do you have to go big?
No. In fact, if it was a new partner that was coming on board here, we would make them aware of the larger size ad units that we've got. And there are actually some larger size ad units. So for those of you that are Yahoo Mail users, when you send an email, you see a send confirm screen. There typically is what's always been a fairly large ad there. Those are high performing types of units, and then over the last year and a half we've actually made it bigger to make it look more like that login screen that I've showed you. So they tend to come with a little bit of a premium, but often the case is that premium is worth it in terms of its performance on click-through and exposures. I think starting out a conversation, you're going to see things that look more like the traditional ads that you're going to see 300 by 250s, you're going to see 160 by 600s, generic stuff that comes at a lower price overall, but it will build over time. It's important for us, in most of the conversations that we have, we are trying to educate our potential partners and advertisers and clients on all of the options that are out there and test and scale after that.
Great, thanks so much, Brooks. So guys, we have about 1 minute left in the hour, so I am going to take one more question. I'm going to send this one over to Brooks, and then Matt, if you want to chime in, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Lacey says, I don't have an in-house designer. How should I outsource creative for my display ads?
That's a good question. It's kind of a slippery slope as far as someone in my shoes making a recommendation about a certain creative. I don't know where the question's coming in from around the country, but I certainly could do some exploring about a cost-effective partner that you've got. I mentioned earlier that this company called adready.com, A-D-R-E-A-D-Y. They provide a tool where you could build it through a self-serve platform and start serving impressions through that platform at low cost, low budget thresholds, and it's kind of a 2-for-1 deal where you actually get to build the creative, or they can actually help you with it, but they're not charging exorbitant creative agency types of fees. And you'd actually be able to access Yahoo inventory and others via that channel. But if you want to,
oh, go ahead.
If you want to forward my email address to that person, that'd be fine.
Oh yeah, I would be happy to. I kind of want to add on to that question. Do you see that flash ads are more effective? Is it worth it to really put the big investment into having a flash designer and doing some flash ads?
By and large, in my years here, as much as I want to see some of our larger, direct response partners having quote-unquote sexier type of ads that I would like to see as a consumer, they don't refuse just from a cost perspective, but they've actually found in many cases that traditional GIF images with limited animation actually drives the results. Doesn't always have to be that way.
Kind of good to know.
Yep.
But of course, being creative, having a great message, having that message be relevant, and then being really thoughtful about testing is probably really, the way to determine which ads work the best.
Absolutely.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this call. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Please remember that you still have about 3 more minutes to tweet using the hashtag PPC and display for an opportunity to win a $25 Amazon.com gift card. I just really want to thank my presenters today. Brooks, thank you so much for joining us. You have a wealth of knowledge, and it's so much appreciated.
Thank you for having us, and appreciate everybody joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matt, as always, great job. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it. Learned a little bit about display.
Everyone, keep an eye on your email. Tomorrow we will be sending you a link to the recording and the slides and this paper that Brooks is sharing, along with, I believe, a video link that he asked us to share. So lots of goodies in that email, and keep your eye out. Thank you so much for attending, everyone. I'm Anna Sawyer. This is the end of the webinar.